The heat on John Harbaugh is turning up after the Baltimore Ravens' shameful Week 2 loss to the Las Vegas Raiders. As Zay Flowers voices his game plan frustration late on Sunday night on social media. We talk about what was said, what happened, how the Ravens can move forward, and a big conversation about John Harbaugh. All that and more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you as always on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every day. We're free and available for you all podcasting platforms, video form on YouTube, audio form, wherever you get your shows for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Appreciate everybody for being here today. The Ravens suffer a tough 26-23 loss to the Las Vegas Raiders, dropping them to 0-2 for the first time since 2015. Had a very spirited post-game after the game yesterday, and rightfully so. I think, whatever word you want to use, disastrous, disappointing, embarrassing. That list, we could probably have our own show on what word we could use to describe the Ravens' loss. But we have other storylines to dive into. The biggest one being John Harbaugh, the mismanagement of this game, something that is not the first time we're talking about it. And I think that's a big proponent of why people are so frustrated. And to have a real conversation about John Harbaugh, we'll have real conversations throughout this week and just kind of analyze where this team is right now, because, starting 0-2, it's never a good thing. And especially for a team like Baltimore, where there are still plenty of questions to be answered. So we'll talk about the heat turning up for John Harbaugh. Is it time for a change? All those big points that people have been making all in the past, 15 hours or so once this episode comes out. And then in the second part of the show, for those who were awake late on Sunday night into the Monday morning here, very early hours of Monday morning, you probably saw Zay Flowers voice his frustration on social media. If you went to bed, you might not have seen it. You might be waking up to this news. So I guess I will be the breaker of this news here. By the time this episode gets out, or maybe by the time you're listening to it, Zay may have already unreposted what he had reposted. So we'll talk about what he had to say. And look, just something feels off right now in Baltimore, and we're going to talk about it. But Zay did voice his frustration on social media. And then finally, we'll talk about the offensive line, continuing their poor play. John Harbaugh, what his plan has to be on that offensive line, and just the way the Ravens historically mismanaged this game, especially not only the game, honestly, but the offensive line in general over the course of the offseason. Not an exciting game, but there are some exciting things we're going to do on this show, especially on the video side of things, to kind of make it feel a little more like a show, I guess. Not that it isn't already, but I'm going to start adding in graphics to the show just to support the points I'm making. Not a lot, just, so some of our social team over here on the Locked On Podcast Network does an awesome job. And, we just throw some graphics together, stats, quotes, whatever it may be, and put those up. So sometimes it might be a lot of graphics, sometimes it might be a little, sometimes maybe none. But nothing changes. Just going to be something I pop up, a visual aid of sorts. So we'll pull them up, we'll bring them down. But that, to me, is an exciting part of how the show, we're going to, again, continue to evolve the show over the course of the season. I'm really excited about that. But enough about that. Let's talk about John Harbaugh. The heat turning up on John Harbaugh. And I guess I'll introduce these graphics by putting up I didn't mean to make it this petty, but it kind of felt petty when I was making it. Look, John Harbaugh, over the course of this game, the thing that ended up costing the Ravens in this one, he was 0 for 2 on challenges. This is what we talk about, the game management type deal for John Harbaugh, where sometimes the situational game awareness is just, it's not there for John Harbaugh. So he was 0 for 2 on challenges. 2 challenges that it's understandable if it's a close play or you feel like, there's conclusive evidence in your favor. But both times, you were watching the game, I was watching the game. John Harbaugh goes 0 for 2 on challenges that are pretty obviously plays and calls that you just should not be challenging. That resulted in the 2 timeouts lost with the 1 loss. Baltimore, again, one of the big reasons the Ravens lost that game. So when talking about John Harbaugh here, I think it's really important to, almost go and look back on what happened. I mean, look, you talk about with John Harbaugh, the first play that happened, it was Zay Flowers. The ball bounces up on a turf. Everybody sees it, and Harbaugh still challenges it. And then the second play was a Devontae Adams, 2 feet down, catch, possession. There was nothing to challenge there. John Harbaugh talked about it, said it's kind of a bang-bang thing. He's hearing from upstairs and thought it could go his way possibly. It's not good enough. It cost you the game. At least a shot. If anything, at least a shot to go out there and win the game or tie the game. Because let's face it, the Ravens needed a timeout in the biggest moment in that game. The Raiders walked the Ravens defense down. For as well as that Ravens defense played for the majority of the game in a lot of different aspects, especially in the run game, holding the Raiders to 1.6 yards per carry, they got walked down. And the Ravens had to use all their timeouts, 2-minute warning. Well, they only had 2 timeouts, and the Ravens, instead of having 1 minute and 7 seconds to go down and try to win or tie the game, you had 27 seconds. And that's a world of difference. That is so much time. And it's things that we've seen before. We can talk about all these records that John Harbaugh, the Raiders entering Sunday, 49, count it, 4-9, 49 straight losses when they were trailing by 10 points or more in the fourth quarter, I believe that stat was. Well, number 50 is the charm, I guess. You have Josh Dubois from AP. John Harbaugh now has the most blown double-digit leads in the fourth quarter of any coach since at least 1991 after losing to the Raiders for his 9th blown lead. John Harbaugh has lost 8 times after leading by double digits in the fourth quarter, tied with Andy Reid for the most for any coach since 1991, since at least that. I mean, it's thing after thing after thing. These last 5 years, John Harbaugh, I'll pull up this other stat quickly. It's like you can make the graphic. There are graphics for everything here. Last 5 seasons, the Ravens, 10 losses with a 7+ point lead in the fourth quarter. That's the most in the NFL. I mean, you remember games like 13-3 against Pittsburgh, 19-10 Jacksonville, 20-10 against the Giants. That was Lamar's only NFC loss in his career. All of that, I mean, it's bad. It's bad. And we talk about, the good things come to an end. Situations like this, where it's the same thing over and over again. Because not only is this a thing that we've seen this season with this Raiders loss, but we've seen it in previous seasons too. This is not just like this is the first time this has happened, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, that's new. No, this isn't new. The Ravens play down to competition. The game management isn't there. Situational awareness isn't there. No, we pinned a lot of this on Greg Roman. And I'm not saying Roman is absolved of all fault, right? I mean, there are a lot of reasons Greg Roman is no longer the coach in Baltimore, the offensive coordinator in Baltimore. A lot of it is him. A lot of it was him. That's the reason, right? But it's the same thing we were talking about with Greg Roman, where he couldn't read the game, mismanaged certain situations, couldn't figure out when to run, when to pass, couldn't figure out this, that, and the other. Well, we're still seeing those issues today. And guess who's not on the team anymore? Greg Roman. So, look, the Ravens, my prediction here is I don't expect them to do anything this season in terms of firing John Harbaugh. Like, obviously, a 1-4, 0-5 start, those conversations would be extremely loud. And look, we'd be having them on this show. But the reality to me, right? If I want to give my reality prediction, not what I would do, but my prediction of what I feel like the Ravens will do, is they will wait. Because we know this organization is loyal, sometimes to a fault. And some people have described that loyalty as stubborn in instances, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think we saw it with Greg Roman. We saw it with Steve Saunders. We've seen it with other people as well. Now, I'd rather have an organization be more loyal than just not loyal at all. But sometimes they are loyal to a fault for Harbaugh. But they need a heck of a win in week 3 against Dallas, because that's the other thing. right? They're staring down the Dallas Cowboys, Buffalo Bills, and Cincinnati Bengals in back-to-back-to-back weeks after starting 0-2. One team last year made the playoffs starting 0-2. And that was the Houston Texans. So the Ravens have a lot of work to do. But, I'm sure there'll be think pieces and narratives today about, Lamar did this, Lamar did that. Lamar didn't do it. Lamar did fine. Did he miss a couple of throws? Sure. Were there areas where he could have done a little better? Sure. But Lamar was barely on the list, right? I mean, you can talk about the interception. That ball hit Rashod Bateman in both his hands. It's not on Lamar. It's not on Lamar. Lamar didn't give himself the ball back with 27 seconds left, right? It's those types of things where blame is to be distributed. It's not all on John Harbaugh, not all on anybody, but we can distribute different amounts of blame. And it just felt like the situational awareness was not on point yesterday to a team that they should have beat and they should have made a statement against. But you know what? Credit to Las Vegas for going out there, getting the job done. And now Baltimore finds himself in a very precarious situation with, honestly, at this point, more questions than answers on a lot of different things. And that all falls back on the head coach. It all falls back on the head coach. And it's very rare you see a coach tenured like John Harbaugh. Speaks a lot to what he's been able to do over his Ravens career, but it's not going to last forever. It's not going to last forever. I had talked about before the season how, to me, anything less than the AFC Championship, Harbaugh is probably gone. Well, I mean, they're 0-2, and they have a lot of work to do to get to where they want to be. So season's not over. I'm not declaring the season over. Don't take this that way. But we have to have real conversations about this. We're not just going to sweep it under the rug and say, well, just go get them next week. It'll be, everything's fine. Look, you're about as close to hitting the panic button as possible right now. And if the Ravens drop the game to Dallas, I am slamming the panic button. So we're going to see what happens. But John Harbaugh, the heat is turning up. His seat is getting warm. And we're going to see what ends up happening with him. Coming up, though, we'll talk about Zay Flowers voicing his frustration, talking about what he had to say, some of the game plan, and some disappointment with Todd Monken. Stay tuned. A lot to get to on the show. First, the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. So one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football week in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss the deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. Plus, PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. On my picks that I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. So for that Ravens and Raiders game, if you chose more on Isaiah Likely or maybe more on Zay Flowers did pretty well, but for Likely, not the best day. But download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. And the show is brought to you by DoorDash. Football's finally back, which means it's time to order your favorite game day food, snacks, and drinks on DoorDash without missing a play. And there have been so many times. There was a time where I went to a game day party, went to my friend's house, and there was just no food. There was no food there. And I'm like, all right, what are we doing here? So I went, and we all called up DoorDash. We got some food delivered for the game, and that honestly saved the day. So look, there are a bunch of game day essentials, drinks, food, snacks, even extra batteries to make sure the remote doesn't end up going on you, just in case you got the extra batteries there. Plus, the ultimate spread for me includes a bunch of drinks, bunch of snacks. Desserts are key as well. And for the Ravens, if there's a food that best represents, or a game day essential that best represents the Ravens, I'd probably go with Tabasco. They have some spice to them. They got some kick to them as well. But if you want to go with the Old Bay option for the Maryland flavor, I don't blame you on that one. Use promo code LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off of the $10 value when you spend $15 plus on your first order. Limited time offer. Terms apply. Promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness. Your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Must be 21 plus to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets. We're back for our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here with you. Still talking about the Ravens' 26-23 loss to the Las Vegas Raiders on this Monday edition of the show. Appreciate everybody for being here. Be sure to like, subscribe on YouTube. You can follow along in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. We did a post-game live after the game. Obviously, when you have the hours to kind of evaluate and think and cool off, it's a much more reserved type deal. But look, on that post game, that instant reaction, I was fired up. So be sure to tune in for those. We have Monday through Friday content. Obviously, it's a regular scheduled programming. We have bonus episodes, pregame episodes, a lot going on Locked On Ravens. So appreciate everybody. We're almost to 8,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, which is incredible. And in audio form, our community continues to grow every single day. Now, let's talk about what Zay Flowers said, or I guess reposted. He voiced his frustration. And look, sometimes actions can be louder than words. And Zay's action of reposting certainly got people's attention. And look, at the time I'm recording this, the repost is still up. Again, I'm not sure if by the time you're listening, it will still be. But they ended up talking about Zay Flowers, had a good game on Sunday, right, was involved. But we didn't really see as much of him in the second half. And there was someone who said after Zay got his first touchdown of the season, and guess what? We didn't involve him one bit after this, and then said about coaching malpractice. And then someone else responded to that and said second week in a row that he's had a big first half and then they stopped getting the ball in the second. And Zay Flowers reposted that one. And obviously it's drawn a lot of attention. A lot of people I've seen stuff about Marquise Brown coming back in the fold, and now the wide receiver one for the Ravens is on social media voicing his displeasure again, because obviously Marquise Brown did that when he was in Baltimore. Just the vibes are off, man. Vibes are off. It's tough right now. I expected this season to be fun. I expected it to at least to start, right? Not that it can't turn around, but man, you got the Ravens losing games like this. They haven't won a game, and they lose in embarrassing fashion. Their star players are speaking out on social media or reposting out on social media, I guess is what I'll call that. And I agree. Zay Flowers and his usage in the Todd Monken era has been pretty highly questionable to me for the most part. I think they use him too much horizontally, and they need to start using him a bit more vertically. And I think we saw that a little bit in this game here in week 2, but then they went away from it. And I'm just like, why are you going away from what's working? They started to get the run game going in the fourth quarter. I was like, okay, this is awesome. They're finally figuring out how to utilize Derrick Henry correctly. Then they just went away from it at the end of the game. And it's, my job is to come up here and say a lot of words about this team. And I've said this before, but sometimes I just don't have any. And I struggle for them because it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? It's that type of thing where you feel like this team is going to find answers, and then they don't. And that's difficult. I've been highly unimpressed with Todd Monken through 2 games. I think Zay Flowers' repost is, a direct, hey, with Todd Monken, Harbaugh, it's not great. Not great. Flowers in this game, if you want to look at his pure box score stats, again, I thought he played well. Overall, 7 receptions, 91 yards, and a touchdown. Had 11 targets, 6 more than anybody else in the Ravens. Second was Mark Andrews with 5. It has to be better. The season, if you want it to turn around, you have to get everybody on the same page. We saw Lamar express frustration on the Harbaugh challenge. You could tell, man, he was upset the whole game. He was upset the whole game. But a lot of the players are echoing, like, this isn't us, Ronnie Stanley, Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson, everything along those lines. And then, John Harbaugh is kind of saying, well, 15 games out of the final season, this, and, called it a disappointing loss. But I feel like a lot of people were underwhelmed with John Harbaugh's post-game press conference. And that's just kind of been a theme. It's kind of been a theme. So, look, it's not great. Maybe Zay will clarify. I don't know. Again, at the time of this recording, I'm going off what I have, and that is Zay Flowers reposted something expressing his frustration on social media about his involvement in the second half of that game. I don't blame him. Todd Monken, it's the same stuff. It's the same stuff we've been talking about forever since he got in here. And I expected him to be better. I expected it to improve. What we talked about last year was his offense either started fast and fell off a cliff late, or they started slow and found their mojo late. Well, we've seen both in week 1, and they've both come at inopportune times because we saw them both in week 1, and we saw them again in week 2. It's that same thing where in week 1, they started fast, and then they kind of didn't really do anything for a lot of the game after that. Then you have this game where it was 9-6 going into halftime. They find their mojo late, but then they go away from it after. And then all of a sudden you're making poor calls at the end of the game and you're trying to get cute with it. The CBS broadcast called them out on it too. They got too cute. They're getting too cute. Run the ball. Use Derrick Henry. Use Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson had 16 carries in that first game. He had 5 in this one. I think a nice sweet spot for Lamar Jackson is probably anywhere from 7 to 10 carries. 7 to 10 carries a week for Lamar. I think it utilizes him in that aspect enough where you obviously want to play to his strengths both as a passer and a rusher, but it's not overextending and overusing him. I think 7 to 10 is a good sweet spot for Lamar, maybe 8 to 11 if you're feeling spicy. I think that's the sweet spot for him. Keep defenses on their toes. And we saw in that Flowers touchdown, Derrick Henry was finally starting to find it, had that 29-yard run, that vintage Derrick Henry stiff arm. And the Raiders defense was so caught up with that where it was a play action look and the Raiders jumped up. They jumped up to stop the run. And Flowers was wide open in the end zone. We saw in a couple plays, they were even worried about Lamar. And so when the edge defender had to choose between Lamar and Derrick Henry, the edge defender jumped up to Lamar, but unfortunately for them, Derrick Henry had the ball and was already running. So they have the talent, they have the personnel, they have defenses in the palm of their hands, but they're just not doing it correctly. And they're not being able to execute in the game plan. It's all this in one, where I think after week 1, a lot of people were fine with that loss. You know, you hate to lose. It's tough to lose, but there are a lot of things that I thought, and I think a lot of other people thought they could build on. But here they are in week 2, and they're just reverting. They showed a couple of positive things on the offensive side of the ball. And we haven't even talked about the defense because all the storylines are on the offensive side of the ball. The defense was fine for the most part. Pass defense needs some work, but I mean, Zach Orr through 2 games. I mean, this isn't on Zach Orr. It's not on Zach Orr. It's on a lot of other things, one of which is the offensive line. So coming up in the final part of the show, we're going to be diving into the offensive line. We'll get a little bit more into a game recap in general, some quotes, and a lot more coming up next year on this Monday edition of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime, and I love going to live events no matter what kind, and I've made a ton of great memories from sports, music, theater, comedy, whatever, you name it. There are a lot that I also look forward to going to, a couple per season, a couple per year I try to go to and make some great memories. But Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And plus, they had a great 50% off Labor Day sale for Diamondbacks, Dodgers, and that was awesome. But obviously, the Ravens travel to Dallas this upcoming week. But for that Bills game next week, going to be a good one in prime time. Be sure to go to Gametime to look at deals. They have super deals and other tiers of deals as well. Plus, the app has a ton of great features, including Gametime Picks, all-in pricing, which you have to toggle on. That has to be on in order to use that feature. All-in pricing, seat views, lowest price guarantee, Gametime ticket coverage, and so much more. Plus, the app is super easy to use and navigate. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, spelled LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. And the show is brought to you by DK Law Group. When you need a law firm, do you want the legal runaround, or would you rather have a no-nonsense approach? You get the latter with DK Law Group. DK Law Group is a Maryland-based law firm who is redefining the legal process with their modern approach. DK Law Group specializes in real estate law, estate planning, business law, and family law. They're tech-savvy, they treat clients like family, and they focus on keeping your legal solutions simple. DK Law Group is a woman-led firm with Diana Khan at the helm. Diana has been called an unparalleled legal expert by some. One of the things quickly noticed with DK Law Group is their transparent pricing. They believe in clarity and cost and no one left in limbo. DK Law Group knows that speed is key, but leveraging technology, DK Law Group streamlines the process to serve you better and faster. Contact DK Law Group today at dklawmd.com. Locked On listeners and call today to schedule a free 30-minute consultation when you mention the tagline, Empowering Legacies. We're back, our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here with you still on this Monday. Really appreciate everybody for being here, especially after a loss. I know it can be tough to consume content for your favorite sports teams after losses. I've been there. Trust me, and me talking about it certainly isn't easy as well. But hey, you know what? We have to talk about it. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Follow along in audio form if you're an everydayer. Really appreciate your consistent support. If you're a first-time listener, first-time watcher, welcome into the channel. The show, hopefully you stay a while. And if you're somewhere in the middle, welcome back. If you have a friend or a family member who wants Ravens coverage 5 days a week, we do daily, of course. Be sure to send them our way here on Locked On Ravens. Let's talk about that offensive line a little bit and just overall generally what happened in this game. Again, we talked a lot about it in that post-game episode. I highly encourage everybody to go back and listen to that if you have not already. But some stuff for the Ravens. John Harbaugh talked about that offensive line and had a quote that some people might not necessarily be in love with. So Harbaugh was asked about the offensive line, what happened, and he said, quote, "Yes, I'm just going to look and try to coach the guys and keep getting better with the guys. I'll look at the tape and we'll see. We're always going to play the best players. That's part of it. If that is what your question is, we'll always try to do that." So this to me has a couple of different interpretations, if we're being honest. First of all, the whole part about him playing the best guys is objectively false. Just objectively false. He can say it all he wants. It's false. And I can give you a clear reason why. I said this on the live show too. But I'm just like, what are you saying? Because if you're truly playing the best guys, your best five, well, you're not, because you play six. If you're playing the best players in that right tackle rotation, one player is better and one player is worse. I think Patrick McCary has been playing worse than Roger Rosengarten. I think Rosengarten deserves that right tackle spot. But we can be honest and say that, look, it's not true. Because if you think Rosengarten's a better player, if you think McCary is a better player, right? It doesn't matter who you think's a better player. Well, you're putting the other guy in and that guy is worse. So you're not playing the best guys. I've been very adamant. This team cannot run a rotation. They cannot. And they also can't play Daniel Falele. He's so slow getting to his spots. He's plotting. He shuffles his feet on that stunt that had Lamar. He got almost suplexed to the ground. Not actually, but he was lifted off his feet and planted by Max Crosby. They ran a stunt, and Daniel Falele shuffles his feet to get over, and Crosby just runs right by him. It was easy work. Runs right in between Falele and Tyler Linderbaum, who was caught up on his own guy. It was Falele's responsibility to pick up Crosby on that stunt. He can't get to a spot quick enough. The Ravens, they like to pull their guards and their linemen in their run. They like to run outside. They like to get to the outside. Falele multiple times, at least a couple in this game, could not get to a spot. And the defender had a free shot on Derrick Henry, a free shot on the runner. You have to be able to pull in this offense, and Falele cannot do it enough effectively. And for Rosengarten, what kind of message does it send to your rookie? What kind of message? If he goes out there and he stonewalls Max Crosby on a couple possessions after McCary struggles, and he's probably feeling good, saying, all right, I'm finding a groove. And then the coach says, all right, back to the bench. You're done for a couple series. Wait it out. You lose momentum. You're not putting the best guy out there, regardless of who you think should be the starter in that rotation. The Ravens historically mismanaged their offensive line this offseason. I said it on the live show, where they lost 3 vets. They replaced it with 3 young guys. They didn't necessarily put a ton of investment in there. And now it's biting them. Who could have saw this coming? Me. And probably a lot of everybody listening and watching too. That's just what it is. We can call it. And they can't rebuild this line during the season. Everybody needs good offensive linemen. Everybody needs offensive line depth. It is very hard to not pay premium for a guy, and even guys that are available are probably not even that good. So the Ravens have to kind of deal with what they have put in front of them this season. I think it's going to be a big conversation point next offseason, or this upcoming offseason, but we're not there. I think they will be better than what we've seen, but it's going to be a problem all year. But I think he can start by making the necessary changes, which is putting Ben Cleveland in at right guard and Roger Rosengarten full-time in a right tackle. That's where you can start. Full game recap here. for the Ravens and the Raiders. Again, 26-23, Las Vegas beats Baltimore. The Ravens just dominated on the ground. The Raiders had 1.6 yards per carry in this game. Baltimore just, again, 151. Derrick Henry got going. Really good to see. Ravens had more than 100 more total yards, 123 to be exact, more total yards than the Raiders on offense, 383 compared to 260. Third down conversions, both teams actually struggled good amount here. The Ravens went 3 of 11, the Raiders 4 of 12, and plus the Raiders went 0 for 1 on fourth down at that stop. But here it is with the penalties. 11 for 109 for the Ravens, 3 for 15 for the Raiders. There were so many poor penalties in this game. Again, just another ref show. I'm not going to blame the refs for this loss entirely, but they certainly played a part. Face mask that was phantom, pass interference where Devontae Adams and Brandon Stevens were hand fighting it. Even if you want to call the tug on the jersey by Stevens, Adams was doing a lot of hand fighting himself. Chris Board, phantom unnecessary roughness, just phantom hold, just everything. Look, some of them were legit penalties. I'm not trying to say that there were 11 penalties. They were all just, not penalties. But if we're being honest, let's be honest with it. Not all those were penalties. All right. Like, don't put yourself in a position to have the refs impact a game to have you lose, but also the refs need to be better at their job. That's just what it is. And then to round it out, 5.4 yards per play for the Raiders, 6.4 yards per play for the Ravens. Derrick Henry, I thought, did play really well in this game overall. I mean, again, it took him a little bit to get going, but ended the game 18 carries, 84 yards, and a touchdown. Mark Andrews got himself going a little bit, 4 for 51. Bateman had 3 for 40, bounced back from the ball that bounced off his hands for an interception, but still, you're just like, all right. Now, Isaiah Likely, 2 for 26. Defensively, we haven't really talked about defense at all. Roquan and Marlon had double-digit tackles, 11 and 10, but shout out Adefe Owe, shout out Kyle Van Noy. 4.5 sacks between the two of those guys. Nnamdi Madubuike, Travis Jones. I mean, all of these guys just absolutely stepping up. The defensive line was A+. A+. So shout out to the defensive line. Pass defense certainly still needs some work, but that is what it is. And then let's dive into it quickly. Full AFC North standings through 2 weeks. The Steelers, number 1 at 2-0. Browns, 1-1. Ravens, 0-2. Bengals, 0-2. So they are tied for last in the division. So, I mean, look, Steelers would have scored 1 touchdown this season. Weird AFC North season to start here. Weird. So, man, we have lots to dive into this week. We are far from over talking about this team. We have so many points, so be sure to stick with us here on Locked On Ravens. The graphics were a fun add on YouTube, and again, sometimes we might reuse some of these graphics just, for convenience sake and just to have them up here. But again, another way to just improve the show, and we'll keep doing that, both video and audio form. Really excited for where the show is heading. And even though the Ravens game, not very excited about that loss, we still have it covered on Locked On Ravens, rain or shine. So that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, follow along, video form, audio form, the whole 9 yards. I'll see you right back here tomorrow for more Ravens content on Locked On Ravens.